Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack here. Monday now, the 26th of May, 2025. Hope your Memorial Day is going well. Got to talk about the Eastern Pacific. Going to have our first named storm out that way, it would appear, and then maybe something tries to spill over in terms of favorability into the Atlantic Basin as we begin hurricane season, which, by the way, is less than a week away, in case you weren't aware. Yes, June 1st is coming up. June through November, that is the calendar hurricane season. Roughly 183 days, something like that, of having to really keep a close watch on the tropics. But things are already starting to get busy. It would appear right on schedule. Climatologically, this is exactly what we would expect for the Eastern Pacific. We'll go over that. We'll take a look at a huge hailstone or two that were found out in Texas. And then something right here off to my right that I'm going to show you I'm very excited about. We'll cover all of that and more on this Memorial Day 2025. First of all, National Hurricane Center homepage, there it is, red area. They do this now, they being the National Hurricane Center, the 7-day outlook is what is prominent. So if you go to hurricanes.gov, it's the 7-day outlook, not the 2-day. You actually have to click on that to get the 2-day. By default, it goes to the 7-day outlook, just so you know. And for now, there's nothing in the Atlantic Basin, so we switch over to the Pacific, and boom, there you are. We have this system here off the coast of Mexico, well off the coast of Mexico, showing signs, plural, all of it there, of developing over the next several days. The good news is this will stay well off the coast of Mexico over here. Waters are a little bit cool up this way, so it'll die away pretty quickly. Whatever it does form into, no worries about it for land impacts. And that's what the bottom line is, right? We want to know, will these impact land, these tropical cyclones, when they form? And this is the feature down here. And no, it won't have any direct impacts. If it were to become a hurricane up through here, it could send some swells towards some of these land areas. And those are indirect impacts. Impacts nevertheless, and something we'll certainly keep an eye on. But look, you can see the area of energy down here starting to congeal, a little bit of rotation that's evident just in the cloud photograph here, the series of photographs that we call an animation. And this should go on to become the first named storm in the East Pac. And in case you were wondering, what are the names in the Eastern Pacific? I know I got up today and I was sitting here thinking, hey, what are the names for the East Pac? Because honestly, I don't know off the top of my head, so we will learn together. It's Alvin. So we have Alvin, no chipmunks or anything like that, so just forget it. Alvin, Barbara, Cosme, and Delilah, and Eric, and Flossie, and Gil, and so forth and so on. If we finish out the season with Zelda, wow, the East Pac will certainly be very, very busy. A below normal season is expected, so we'll probably get through Octave, maybe Priscilla, we'll see. But we start with Alvin, and this does look like it's on its way to organizing and giving us our first named storm. Now look, this is really cool. I like to reference this map, this particular layer of the atmosphere. Remember, our atmosphere is made up of layers, basic meteorology for you. I like to look at the 850 millibar layer, which is about 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere, for vorticity, the sign that the atmosphere is bundling energy. And we can see that energy here in the GFS represented by a different color gradient. The more of that is concentrated and the more circular it becomes, then the more intense our cyclones are on this here planet. Same is probably true elsewhere throughout the solar system, but right now we only have meteorology that I'm aware of on planet Earth. And it's pretty easy to see how this energy comes together. So there it is, loosely organized right now. This is the 12Z GFS, and this is that 850 millibar level that I was telling you about. And I like this because it's easy to see how this comes together. You don't even have to try. There it is over the next couple of days. You see it goes from not much at the initial, gathering that energy up, thunderstorms develop, and you see that vorticity concentrating, and by about 60 hours, maybe less, we should have a bona fide tropical cyclone moving through the Eastern Pacific, well off the coast of the Baja. Now that could bring some squally conditions up here. I don't want to completely discount that possibility, but it does not look like this will have any direct impact as an intense system. Nothing to get too alarmed about. So if you've got plans to go to Cabo San Lucas or anywhere along the Mexican coast, it's hurricane season out there. So yes, keep an eye on it, but no, don't cancel those plans. I wouldn't worry about it right now. The air up here is going to be too stable, what we call the thermodynamics. And look, I can go back here and show you that. All this through here where you don't see much in the way of any cloud cover, that's because it's pretty stable up there for now. Even more so over here where you have this very low cumulus cloud deck. But no, I don't think this is going to have much chance to become too strong. And even if it does, it should stay pretty far offshore. The European model, what we call the ECMWF or the Euro, similar song and dance with this, if you will, forming over the next few days, headed towards eventual death there in those cooler waters and the more stable thermodynamic environment. So the GFS and the Euro pretty much lockstep in with each other, that we will get something to develop in the Eastern Pacific. And again, the name would be Alvin. So we'll have something to track on our interactive map pretty soon, I do believe. What about the Atlantic Basin? Well, like I mentioned, hurricane season officially begins June the 1st. We still have a few more days until that happens, but we are already looking out. All of us in the weather community that know where to look for these things, we are looking out into the future to see what the ensembles show. One operational model, that can be helpful, but what about the what-if scenarios with a whole bunch of different models? We call those the ensembles. That's a simplified way of putting it, and that can give us an idea. Again, it's kind of like polling somebody. You ask one person what's their favorite movie, you get a very definitive, distinct answer. You ask 500 people what their favorite movie is, you can start to develop a consensus, and that's sort of similar to what we have here with the models. Which one of the models will get it right, like somebody's favorite movie, we don't know. But that's why the ensembles can be helpful, because you can get sort of a density, and Dr. Levi Cowan has showed that here on these ensemble maps using gradients, that there is some indication that as we get into the first part of June, that we could see something try to develop in the western part of the Atlantic Basin, owed to the fact that a more favorable upward motion pattern is coming through. And when I show you the sea surface temperatures, there is no argument there. They are certainly warm enough to support something. So we're going to have to start watching several days down the road for something maybe starting to pop up in the Atlantic Basin. But again, nothing to worry about, it's not alarming. It's expected this time of year. We're getting closer to the hurricane season, and these little pulses of energy you can see here on this particular Hofmolar diagram, we are looking at this favorable area of green moving through, and that would favor the longitudinal areas of mainly the western Atlantic Basin here. So this green is favorable, these oranges and yellows generally not favorable, and it's coming, the opportunity anyway. So we will be watching to see if indeed something takes advantage of that opportunity. So let's switch that same map of the 850 millibar level over to the Atlantic Basin here. And as I scroll this out to the next week or so, we don't see anything definitive coming out of the Caribbean. A little piece of energy that streams up right through here into Cuba and parts of the remainder of the Greater Antilles, but nothing, again, that says, oh man, we really got to watch out for this. But any piece of energy that you see like this down here is weather, okay? And that could be squally. You could just have a tropical disturbance, and that can bring a lot of rainfall. That impacts cruise ships. That impacts marine interest outside of tourist cruise ships. You've got Panama Canal down here, all kinds of shipping going on, and it impacts aviation. So it's not just being on the lookout for hurricanes, it is the disturbances that lead to hurricanes. And out about a week's time, maybe something tries to get together over here. We'll see. It's a very weak signal, something to just watch, because, hey, by this point in time, look at the date, that would be June 2nd, and it's hurricane season. So, of course, we need to pay attention. All right, now this is pretty interesting, keeping an eye on the sea surface temperatures, and this is, of course, the anomalies map. Pretty remarkable. We are seeing a resurgence here of the cooler anomalies throughout the equatorial Pacific. Maybe, just maybe headed back toward a weak La Nina, I think the argument could be made that we are certainly tipping in favor of a cool neutral setup, and 100% we can all agree there's no reason to even poll this, if you will. My whole analogy of polling people, that's definitely not an El Nino. We are in 100% agreement that that's not an El Nino. Couple that with the very warm Gulf, the very warm Caribbean, relative to average over here, the Western Basin, way above the long-term average. You know, I say way above, we're talking 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. And in energy terms, for the amount of latent heat that stores, that is way above normal. Now, the eastern part of the Atlantic Basin, the main development region out here, is in flux, a little bit of a stronger trade wind pattern every once in a while. But I'm going to tell you something, and I've said this a lot over my career, especially now that we've got the internet here for the last many, many years that I can do these videos. You get these tropical waves that develop, and if this is hostile through here, cooler temperatures, dust, dry air, what we call stability issues, and our tropical waves don't develop here, well, guess what? They're going to try to develop over here, or in the East Pac. So just because you don't have long track hurricanes coming all the way across, and who wants that, right? Nobody wants it. It's interesting to track, but just because this part doesn't happen doesn't mean that you won't get this part. And all you have to do is simply go back to 2018, and from then to now, and almost all of our major impacts for the United States, speaking strictly for the United States, most of those origins have been 2 or 3 days, maybe 5 days at most, away from the coastline. Helene last year, Milton last year, Michael 2018, Ida 2021, Ian 2022, I can go on and on, Idalia, those didn't track all the way across. And then look at Beryl last year. Beryl got started early, Cat 5, kind of struggled through here, and then became a highly impactful Category 1 for the Houston area, and we all remember how that turned out. So, you know, we watch these things, we look at these parameters, the sea surface temperature anomalies, and I will say, concerned that we do have all this warmth relative to average this far west, because you know the tropical waves are coming, and again, if they don't develop here, you have to wonder what will happen over here. And we'll just have to see, because after all, to be real, this is May 25th, always a day behind. What will it look like 90 days from now? We don't know. So no reason to speculate. But it is interesting to see. And if you really look at it now zoomed in, we're getting close to the start of the season. And, you know, if we get any Central American gyre shenanigans down here, where you spin off a little area of energy that might try to make its way up into the Gulf and then flourish and head towards maybe somewhere around here, that's typically where they go this time of year, first part of June. Yeah, the water temperatures are significantly warmer than the long-term average. There's 2 degrees, there's 3 degrees, and and that's Celsius, by the way. Some of these temperature anomalies, the departures from average, are substantial, even right up here against the coast of the southeast. But interestingly enough, too, and I really can't explain this, I got to put this out to some of my marine experts, maybe Ben Knoll or Michael Lowry. Why do we have such abnormal cold? Mark's trying to make up words today. The abnormal cold up there south of the Gulf of Maine and south of Nova Scotia. What's up with that? Like, I mean, I guess the great white sharks like it, because don't they like cold water? I think more than warm water. Maybe I'm off on that. But anyway, that is an interesting contrast, because look, you've got off the chart, literally, warmth right there, that anomaly, +5 or more, butting up against not even 100 miles away to -4. So a weird situation going on up in the Atlantic. That thermohaline mixture and whatever, the gradient, that's amazing. Anyway, back on track. Water temperatures definitely warm enough, and exceedingly so in many cases. And I want that to be motivation for you to take this seriously. All right? We have the science behind it. You got people like me and others who tell you what's going on, and we got to be ready for it when it does happen. So, back to this and the interesting look to the Nino regions, as we call it, right through there, looking ahead to another set of Hofmolar diagrams. All this blue that you see, These are easterly winds that have already happened. These are easterly winds that are going to be coming. This is all in the equatorial Pacific. And you can see out here in the Atlantic, it hasn't exactly been void of fairly brisk easterly winds. That's why the main development region off the coast of Africa has not warmed significantly. But farther to the west, the winds have been pretty light. And that translates to the Caribbean and the Gulf and elsewhere, the western Atlantic. But boy, this here tells me that we could be headed back towards a weak La Nina between now and the peak of hurricane season, something to certainly keep an eye on. All right, so I've been tracking the hail. I got to admit, I've got the FOMO, the fear of missing out. But hey, I'm glad somebody found that. That is freaking amazing. It's real. What a world we live in where we have to say it's real these days. The ice chip project and people with IBHS and the different scientists and storm chasers encountered some huge hail yesterday in this little area of Texas, kind of off the beaten path. Man, oh man, I wish I had. I mean, my vehicle is made, got the big hail guard on there. That would have been incredible. But I wanted to be home with the family. That's very important to me. So I'm glad the FOMO part, I can at least be happy that somebody found something like that. And there's a few pictures of this from different people who encountered these huge stones, 5 inches plus. And think about it. These have been melting on the ground with rain falling on them before these different scientists came across them, or just regular Joes that live out there in Texas or other storm chasers. These things were even bigger when they hit. Ugh. Anyway, I'll be heading back out in a couple weeks to the high plains, and we'll be ready for that for sure. But man, oh man, that is something else. All right. Now, it's time. I'm going to come back on. Sorry, I dropped off prematurely. Let's get rid of that and go to this real quick and show you this guy. The maps are here. All right. Now, I've got a group of people out there, a good fan base, that loves the paper map. We have a tremendous online interactive map. There's a bunch of apps out there that track. But the paper map, the old cartographic way to track cyclones on a piece of paper, is not lost, thanks to people like you. Now, I produce these for our patrons at our $25 level and up. They get one shipped to them each year as part of their membership. But I always have to print like 150 of them because it's just 400 and something bucks whether I print 100 or 150 or whatever. You know, it's just the paper and the setup and all of that. So I always got a bunch left over. And I wish I could just give them away, but I can't. And it's a good way to keep this art of paper tracking maps alive. So I sell them. And if you want one, it's 20 bucks. I have not budged on the price in many, many years. No tariffs, no any markups on these. Ha ha ha. But seriously, $20 including shipping. I fold them in half and then in half again, put it in a big envelope and send it to you flat. That way it only costs like $1 or something like that to ship. If I put them in a tube, the tube is like $4 and then the post office charges $8 or $9. And then I got to sell these for like $35 and that's ridiculous. So I know in Twister they said roll the maps. I can't. I send them flat. So if you want one, $20. I got 100 and I don't know, 10 of them available. All the rest are going to our patrons that are part of our membership there on Patreon. We do the PayPal, so there you go, or Venmo, and just put your address in there. I don't have a web page for you to order from because we all just do it on our phone. You just go to your PayPal, your Venmo. There's the information. And listen, if you want more than one, you want to get a bunch of them, send me an email, hermark@gmail.com. And I can arrange a different price for you. I'm not going to charge you $20 for each one. And I'll probably send those in a tube because you're ordering more than one. So let me know if you want some for the office or something like that. So that's the info. I'll talk about this every once in a while over the coming weeks until they're all gone. All right. Get your paper map. Oops, trying to drop out and get ready for the exit here. Try again. Get your paper map soon. Hurricane season's closing in and you'll be ready to go. And by the way, I drew this myself. I talk about that often, but I did. I made this in Adobe Illustrator way back in the late 90s and have modified it and perfected it over the years. And so it's literally an original piece of art going all the way back to the very beginning of my career when I made hurricane maps and storm surge maps for educational purposes. That's how I got my start in this business. And now look at where we are. Amazing. Speaking of that, couple things to look forward to coming up in the next several weeks and months. This is the 20-year anniversary, and you're going to notice when you get your map, when you get it in the mail, right, because you're going to order one, see down there in that corner, it says right there, that little icon, that logo, 20 years of doing it live. We're going to talk about that in the coming weeks and months. This is the 20-year anniversary, 2025, of streaming live video of weather on the internet. And you know who started it? I did. That is the absolute truth. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to get some people on that helped to make it happen. I might have been the one that brought it to the world, but there was a bunch of people that helped to make that a possibility. And we're going to do a special live show about that soon with myself, with my friend Jim Williams, with Jesse Bass, and Mike Watkins, because it was the four of us collectively. It might have been my idea, wanting to get this out there, but we did have a great group of people to make it happen. So all the live weather video that you see today, from Reed Timmer to Fox Weather Streaming, me, whoever, anybody on Ryan Hall, all those live streaming storm chasers, it all started with us 20 years ago. And we're going to go back through history and talk about the changes, the evolution, how we did it, and where we're hoping to go in the future. All right? Something to look forward to. Now, let me get out of here. You guys have a good rest of your Monday. Thanks, as always, for giving me a part of your day. I always hope you learned something. I really do. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack. I'll talk to you again sometime later in the week.